Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the showcase session. I'm Vincent Wu. I'm teaching filmmaking at the University of Sussex, so I will be the chair of this session. So I'm delighted to introduce our next speaker, the brilliant team, Immersive Squad. So I just made an introduction of the three guest speakers. Dr. Angela Shapiro is an honorary fellow at Glasgow Caledonia University. She's a member of the European Holocaust Research Infrastructures EHRI3 Reference Service Expert Group, member of the Landecker Digital Memory Lab Editorial Group, and belongs to the Digital Holocaust Memory Community. And also Dr. Ben Shepherd. He's a reader in history at Glasgow Caledonia University. He specialized in military history of Germany and Austria during the first half of the 20th century. And Hamid Homatesh, he's a senior lecturer on computer game software development program at Glasgow Caledonia University, and also worked with other computer game programs. So their work focused on perpetrators and protectors, as you can see on the slide, and also to explore moral choices and resistance within the German army during the Second World War. So over to you.
Great, thank you very much for that introduction, Vincent. I'm actually going to get my glasses. I was going to try and read in without glasses, but I really can't do that these days. A second. Right, so thanks very much for coming. It's great to see lots of you here. A little bit about myself first. So I'm predominantly a historian of the German military, as Vincent said, but I don't just focus on military operations. I focus on the politics, the war crimes, and the research that you'll see today emerged from that, or rather the presentation, the game, the serious game that you'll see today emerged from that research. I've written 3 books on the German army, a couple on anti-partisan warfare, one in the Soviet Union, one in Yugoslavia. There's a big Holocaust dimension to both of those, and my most recent book was called Hitler's Soldiers, the German Army and the Third Reich, which was a general history, again incorporating the military operations, military effectiveness, but also the politics, the war crimes, and of course the Holocaust. Now, this is effectively my baby, it's fair to say, but Angela and Hamid will be helping out today. And what you'll be doing in a short while, not just yet, but in a short while, we're actually going to be dividing you into 5 teams to actually do a sample session of Mercy Squad. Now, Mercy Squad is a research-based cooperative education activity. Currently, it's just in in-person form, examining the motives of both Nazi perpetrators and people who sought to protect victims of Nazi crimes. And in this session, I'm going to firstly outline what it is in a bit more detail, how it works, and design considerations, including scholarly and ethical ones. Then you'll all get to sample the experience of playing Mercy Squad, and I'll end by outlining how earlier trials of Mercy Squad have gone, sketch ways in which it might be developed digitally, and then throw things open to discussion. So in Mercy Squad, small teams take the role, and that's going to be you in a minute, of one of a set of 5 fictitious but historically based anti-Nazi characters serving in or alongside the German army in the Soviet Union in 1941. For instance, there's a German soldier with secret part Jewish ancestry, or a compassionate German Red Cross nurse. Teams engage with a 6th character, Captain Engel. Now, he is an extremely rare example of a clandestine, actively anti-Nazi German army officer who wants the characters, which the teams will be operating, to recommend to him soldiers from a small group, 7 in all, to covertly save rather than kill members of Nazi victim groups. Hence, it's a Mercy Squad he's interested in putting together rather than a murder squad. Now, the teams investigate how each soldier's particular social, economic, political, religious, family and other influences might make him more likely or less likely to commit crimes against these victim groups. They make their recommendations to Captain Engel, and all teams then join in a whole group discussion reach an overall judgment on each soldier, and decide which soldiers might best qualify for Mercy Squad. And finally, the facilitator informs the teams how far their decisions are the right ones, based on the historical evidence. Now, it's aimed primarily at 16 to 18-year-olds, the age group studying in this country for A-levels, or in my part of the world, Scottish Highers, or equivalent qualifications, though it could also be pitched somewhat higher or somewhat lower. It teaches participants about what produces criminal perpetrators for a particular cause, the degrees of freedom to resist the pressure to perpetrate, and what factors can better enable individuals to resist such pressure, issues which, as we all know, are becoming more relevant by the day at the moment, unfortunately. And the relevance of Mercy Squad is made clear to participants. I've run it with various college groups, and I always start with a few historical background slides, including a slide depicting the English riots last summer, because that was a clear example of a race riot which had some very disturbing echoes of events of 80, 90 years ago. Now, when it comes to potentially developing Mercy Squad in some digital form or other, it's worth remembering, among other things, that Holocaust-focused digital games still somewhat lag behind Holocaust scholarship when it comes to investigating what made a Holocaust perpetrator. A still quite rare example of this is the recent release by Paint Bucket Games, The Darkest Files, where players take the role of West German federal investigators of Nazi crimes during the 1950s. And I'm very much looking forward to the session on The Darkest Files, which I think is tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. We're looking forward to that very much. So there is a potential opening here for Mercy Squad. How it works. Now, an in-person session of Mercy Squad lasts about 90 minutes to 2 hours. It starts with an introductory historical background in the black cover document in your folder. Feel free to flick through the folders now if you like. There's one on each table, and you'll soon be engaging with some material from the folders as you play the game itself. So it starts with an introductory historical background on German history from 1918 to the early years of World War II. And that background sketches the events and developments in Germany's politics, society and economy that shape the behaviour of the soldiers who the teams are investigating. So the students I've run this with so far, they've all studied the Third Reich at Scottish Highers. But the historical background is there for people who have no knowledge of the period at all. And all the clues they need for making sense of how each soldier's background might influence his behaviour are contained in that historical background document. You don't need to read it now, by the way. As we start the actual session, I'll just make one or two biographical points about the two soldiers who we'll be focusing on. So you'll have all the info you need. The teams then receive their instructions. Now that's in the burgundy covered document. Each of the 5 teams taking part gets its own character card. So again, if you look at your folders, you'll see that you've got a character. For instance, you've got Klaus, the military chaplain. You've got Olga, the Ukrainian peasant woman. There's Eva, the compassionate Red Cross nurse. I thought we would reclaim the name Eva for the good guys, given that Eva was the Christian name of Hitler's girlfriend. Then you've got Helmut, who is a clandestine member of the Social Democratic Party in exile, and Friedrich, who is a soldier with part Jewish ancestry. Now, each of these characters is fictitious but historically plausible. They are based on composites of real people and real organisations, real groups. And they serve in or alongside the German army invading the Soviet Union in 1941. Each character has his or her own motivation for defying the Nazis. And each card gives information on that character's motivation, an outline of how he or she is able to interact with the soldiers who Captain Engel wants him or her to ferret out information on, and brief historical background notes on each. So just to give you one quick example, Eva, the nurse, she is able to interact with soldiers when they're recovering in the field hospital, but the biographical card for her also makes clear that although she is a compassionate Red Cross German nurse, there were plenty of German nurses who were not compassionate because they were in the euthanasia programme to murder the disabled. Each team then receives dossiers on each of the 6 soldiers they're to investigate. Each dossier provides biographical information on the various background influences that might predispose each soldier more or less towards the Nazis. And each team then discusses all the soldiers, their background influences, and how these influences might turn a soldier towards or away from Nazi ideology and the potential to become a perpetrator. And then the teams give a mark to each soldier. So again, you'll see in your folders, there's a series of dossiers on 7 soldiers, one of which, Corporal Hartman, has been completed already to give players an idea of how to elicit the sort of information from his biographical notes to make sense of his motivations. You'll see that Corporal Hartman is someone who Captain Engel definitely will not want to recruit for Mercy Squad because he is a former SA organiser. He's also from Thuringia, which then, as now, very, very hard right part of Germany. And also he is from a Protestant background as opposed to a Catholic background. And all other things being equal, in the early 1930s, when the Nazis were running for office, Protestants tended to be somewhat more enthusiastic in voting for them than Catholics were. It's much more complicated than that, but that is a factor that played a role. So, give a mark to each soldier. 3 marks if the team believes he leans strongly towards Nazi ideology and likely perpetrator territory. 1 mark if they believe he's leaning away from that, if they think he's more compassionate, and therefore the kind of soldier who Captain Engel might want to approach. And then 2 marks if they believe he's somewhere in the middle. The teams then pick 3 soldiers who Captain Engel might approach to join Mercy Squad, and it's the 3 soldiers with the lowest scores who the team will recommend. Now, after about half an hour or so, the teams report back to Captain Engel, and now all 5 teams assemble in a whole group to decide which 3 of the 6 soldiers they will recommend to the captain. Scores for each soldier are totted up cumulatively, and the lowest and therefore best score a soldier can receive is 5, 1 point from each team. And then at the end, the facilitator reveals how far the historical evidence justifies the choice of the 3 soldiers that the teams have made. So far the facilitator has been me, so I might say, soldier number 1, yeah, good choice. Soldier number 2, yeah, good, I'd have picked him. Soldier number 3, you might want to be careful there, because look at this feature of his biography. Maybe you should consider this soldier instead. Now, some design considerations. This is Captain Engel, by the way. Mercy Squad heeds important scholarly and ethical considerations. The ethical considerations are in line with the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's recommendations for teaching and learning about the Holocaust, and with the Digital Holocaust Memory Project's recommendations for gaming and play in Holocaust memory education. And first up, ensure historical accuracy and plausibility. Mercy Squad is historically accurate because it's been put together by a specialist in this area, myself, and it reflects the necessary historical complexities when it comes to the motives and actions of both perpetrators and protectors. And one way it helps ensure this is its particular historical setting. The German campaign in the Soviet Union in 1941 saw the German army follow a series of criminal orders shaped by Nazi ideology and ruthless military objectives. So it was in this campaign that the army was most widely involved in Nazi crimes against numerous victim groups, including Jews, Slavs, Roma, and communists. It'd be harder to set Mercy Squad in, say, 1944. Historians have shown that 3 or 4 years of brutalising conditions in the East increasingly hardened soldiers to a point where fewer and fewer cared little, if anything, day to day about anyone other than their own comrades. So they didn't really care about German civilians by that point to a large extent, save their own immediate family, let alone Soviet civilians. Very few may have actively shown scruples towards Soviet civilians in any practical sense in 1941, but 3 years later, that likelihood was even lower. So 1941 makes for a good setting. Second, avoid glamorising perpetrators. Mercy Squad avoids the kind of crude stereotyping that the AHRI recommendations warn against. Among other things, it focuses on a range of soldiers of the German army rather than the SS, and that helps to demonstrate how ordinary, as well as how numerous, perpetrators could be. It also demonstrates how it's so often difficult to categorise them as morally black or white. And like I said, there are 1 or 2 soldiers perhaps in Mercy Squad who it's quite difficult to figure out, you know, which side they would be on, Mercy Squad or Murder Squad. Avoid potentially harmful over-identification. Participants in Mercy Squad take on the role not of perpetrators or victims, but of individuals excuse me, seeking to help members of Nazi victim groups to escape death, or at least prolong their lives. And that avoids the risk not just of harmfully identifying with perpetrators, you know, that's some dark shit you don't really want to go near, but also of distressing participants by giving them the role of victims. The artwork, which is provided by Picture House 77, aka my brother, who did this for free, and he's done a brilliant job on it. I know I'm biased, but I really do like the artwork here. It plays an important role because although the illustrations are a bit cartoony, they're not overly so, but they're not so realistic as to risk immersing participants traumatically. So I think Joe has struck a good balance there. Avoid oversimplifying protectors. Mercy Squad avoids oversimplified comic-style depictions of protectors and their actions. It makes clear just what sorts of actions perpetrators can and cannot realistically take. That's made clear in the historical background and the instructions. For instance, they're not going to take a Jewish family into the woods, fire over their heads, and then tell them to run over there towards the Soviet lines, Hollywood style. Instead, they might, for example, forge papers for Jews to get them into work details that might save or at least prolong their lives. It doesn't whitewash particular groups that certain protectors belong to. So I gave the example of Eva, who, although she is a nurse, that does not automatically mean she is a good person, given the involvement of many nurses in the euthanasia programme. The artwork helps ensure that protectors look everyday rather than heroic, and to further emphasise to participants that doing the right thing is about internal character rather than external appearances. I did actually want Captain Engel to look a bit sinister. So he's wearing those sort of off-the-shelf, you know, villainous Nazi-style glasses, but he's a good guy. That's the point. Most importantly, the historical background information makes clear that the vast majority of German soldiers did not help victims of the Nazis, and many such soldiers were extensively signed up to Nazi ideology. So you don't want participants coming away from this with the totally false idea that the German army was full of mini Schindlers. Now these caveats, they're quite sobering, but they help ensure that while participants feel invested in Mercy Squad, because it involves saving lives or at least prolonging lives, they stay grounded and realistic. Finally, emphasise agency of victim groups. With the major focus here on perpetrators and protectors, it's important to give victims of the Nazis a face too. So some of the characters who participants operate aren't just protectors, but also members of Nazi victim groups. So one of the team characters, Helmut, where's Helmut? Where's Team Helmut? Helmut? Helmut, the clandestine social democrat. He's drinking from a bottle. Yeah, that's us. You've got Helmut. Okay, so Team Helmut's over there. So he is a clandestine member of the German Social Democratic Party. Where's Friedrich? He's got glasses and a cap on. He's Friedrich? I think he might be over there. You should find, I should have said, I apologise, the actual team character cards are at the front of the folder. Front of the folder? Friedrich's over there. So Friedrich is part Jewish, so he is going to have a grudge against the Nazis for reasons I don't need to spell out. Okay, so there you go, some design considerations there. Now, it's your opportunity, or at least will be your opportunity in a moment, to actually play Mercy Squad for about 15 minutes. I'm going to give you a couple of soldiers to focus on. But here are a couple of pictures of the events that took place at New College, Lanarkshire, quite close to Glasgow, in March 2025. Here's me in action with the college students who were taking part, and in the background there are a couple of undergraduate students of mine. I brought a few undergraduate students of mine along who have studied this area in my specialist level 4 module, and they were helping out, going around the tables, talking to the teams of college students about their choices of soldier. Have they made the right choices? Have they made the wrong choices? Are there any other things that they should think about? What you see on the right there is one of the grey notelets, which you have a set of in each folder, which participants can write their answers on. Okay. So what we're now going to do, we'll move on to digital potential in a minute, but first up, we're going to actually divvy people up into equal groups of 5, or rather 5 groups of equal size. and there's quite a lot of you here, which is great to see. Let's actually just do a head count. 2, 4, 6, 7, 12, 17, 18, 19, 20, if you want to muck in Vincent, yeah? So what we can have, I reckon we can have, there's 20 of you, or thereabouts, so I think we have 4 people per table. So perhaps if a couple of people want to go over there, a couple of people want to go over there, if you all just sort yourselves into groups, and I'll tell you what's going to happen next. If you want to introduce yourselves before you get started. I must say one of the features that comes through in the feedback is the fact that students find this a very satisfying, socially interactive game as well. Okay, so what you're going to do, you're going to have 15 minutes now in your groups to look at 2 soldiers in the dossier pack. Now, Corporal Hartman, who is this chap, has been completed for you already. You're only going to look at 2 other soldiers because you've only got 15 minutes. The 2 soldiers I'd like you to look at are B and C, Sergeant Lutz and Private Anselm, okay? Now I'm just going to say a couple of quick points. I'm not going to make this too easy, but for the benefit of people who aren't necessarily that clued up about the relevant historical background, remember what I said about Catholics and Protestants. If you're a Catholic under the Nazis, you might be less pro-Nazi than if you're a Protestant. Keep that in mind. Regarding, apologies, if I can just make a couple of historical information points before you get started. Regarding Lutz, it says he took part in the street fighting between army and communists in 1919. He was on the side of the army. He is also from a factory worker background. Now that was not necessarily the most enthusiastic pro-Nazi voting bloc, so he might have some interesting mixed loyalties there, potentially. And Private Anselm is a Protestant, so I'm not making him more pro-Nazi, but have a look at the rest of his profile, and maybe that's a bit more complicated as well. So just spend a few minutes thinking about whether you're going to give each of these soldiers a 1, a 2, or a 3, okay? And then we'll see what you've come up with. We'll put your answers together on the flip chart. That's great. Oh, are they over here? Oh, that's great. Right, folks, it's 1:45, so I would like to leave a little time for Q&A follow-up. So what we'll do, as I said, if you're not being able to reach a judgment on both soldiers, don't worry about it. But let's see who has reached a judgment on one other or both. And I think we'll start over here with, which team is this? Friedrich. Friedrich, okay, so Team Friedrich, what did you give Sergeant Lutz?
We thought that he had a high likelihood of volunteering to join the shooting.
Right, so you think he's more likely to be a pro-Nazi.
Yeah.
Now, we can't go into detail about all the reasons in the case of both soldiers, but perhaps just give us one reason why you think, yeah, he's definitely someone the captain would not want to approach.
So he is the son of a factory worker, so
Yeah.
maybe he had made negative experience caused by the Treaty of Versailles in the Ruhr region where he was born, and he was part of the Western Front in the First World War, and possibly part of the Freikorps after the war, fighting communists.
Right, you've made some excellent points there. In fact, tell you what, given the time's pressing, we won't do this totting up the scores, so you'll have to forego that particular feature of the exercise. But I think what we'll just do is restrict ourselves to comments from a couple of tables on each of the soldiers, okay? So some excellent points there. The fact that he's a factory worker and from that background could go one way or the other. That was not a voting bloc that broke for the Nazis in the early 1930s. That might make him anti-Nazi, but if it's in the Ruhr, that was a place which saw huge economic dislocation in the 20s and 30s. You had the occupation by the French, so that might make him more pro-Nazi. And the fact that he was involved in the street fighting in the Ruhr as well as an army veteran might make him more pro-Nazi. Did anyone have a more, should we say, positive view of Lutz? Was there anybody out there who thought, oh, maybe he's not such a bad guy? Anybody? Yeah, what did you think about him?
We gave him 1 because we gave the other one 2, so we're forced into it.
Okay.
But basically because you said that the Catholics were the good guys.
No, it's not as simple as that. You have to make, particularly if you live in the west of Scotland, you've got to make clear that it's not as simple as that. Otherwise, you'll have a sectarian riot on your hands. But it's one factor that might predispose an individual away from the Nazis rather than towards them. Then other factors might dispose the same individual towards them. I mean, Lutz might be a good example of that. So he's a Catholic, he's an army veteran, and he's been in the Ruhr fighting. So, you know, he could go one way or the other. One positive is a family man. He's got 3 kids, and historians have shown that German soldiers who had children tended to be more empathetic towards Soviet families with children than German soldiers who did not have children. Now, it's very difficult to prove that empirically, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that. And, you know, we cannot, again, assume that any German soldier with kids was suddenly feeling really warm and sympathetic towards Soviet civilians, Jewish civilians, or whoever. But again, it could be a factor. Let's talk about Anselm. So this was team, who was this? Did you Helmut? Klaus, Team Klaus, the bishop, or the field chaplain. Okay. Let's hear from Team Helmut. Now, Private Anselm, what did you think of him?
Moderate to low.
Right, okay, so you're feeling more positive towards him. What made you think that about him?
Well, he's a bit younger, so he didn't experience the First World War part.
So less hardened, perhaps.
Less hardened,
Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, he's the son of a diplomat, so that his father was part of the government in some way, but he probably saw some other countries' influences.
Yeah, he's multilingual, and one of the languages he speaks is Russian, so that could come in quite handy. Now, let's hear maybe from Team Eva, or is it Olga? Did either of you have a more negative view of Anselm? Did you have a more negative view? I'd pick Anselm. If I was Captain Engel, I would pick Anselm. The one thing that might tell against him is he's a Protestant, but again, you can't read too much into that. But he is one of the soldiers who participants generally go for. They say, yeah, he's someone who the captain will want to approach. Yeah.
One thing we'll ask you about being a student from 1933 on, so depending on what students go to university.
Well, that's an interesting point, because there's another soldier who was a student who moved in right-wing fraternity groups in the Burschenschaft, so he would definitely be someone who the captain will want to avoid like the plague. But Anselm, the fact that he's a student, students generally being very pro-Nazi, could tell against him, but there are quite a few factors that tell in favour of him as well. I mean, I've not really asked this group specifically about one soldier or the other, but was there anything you'd like to add about one soldier or the other that we haven't covered so far?
I think it was basically all said already.
Okay, well anyway, hopefully you found that interesting. And I think best just to go around and get some quick reactions given the time pressure. But normally what I would do, like I said, would be to just top the scores up for each soldier, and the lower the score, the better. Okay, now I just want to briefly say something about the digital potential of Mercy Squad, very briefly. It could work as an interactive museum-based activity in its current form. It might be an activity at the end of an exhibit gallery, for example. Participants, that might be families or school groups, might just do the exercise with one or other soldier. Might take them 10-15 minutes. I think what happened here was I dropped it down to 2 soldiers because I thought that would be enough to cover in the time available. I think if I run an exercise in this format again, I'll probably have groups focusing on 1 soldier. So apologies if I taxed you a little bit there. But anyway, that's something that could work in a museum. A more complex version could involve deeper character interaction, use of historical sources, so character interaction, for instance, between the team characters and the captain, between the team characters and the soldiers. So Eva could be chatting to one in his hospital bed, for example, eliciting information that way. Friedrich, as a soldier who works in the field censorship department, is getting lots of soldiers' letters coming through his hands. He reads about the soldiers' views in those letters, so there might be potential to use historical sources like Feldpostbriefe, as they are called in German. More nuanced exploration of motives. I mean, one or two differences of opinion about both soldiers here, perhaps. There'd be more potential to explore those nuances in a bit more depth. Degrees of freedom. You might explore what happens next. Once the captain has chosen the 3 soldiers he wants to approach for Mercy Squad, what sorts of actions can they then carry out to save the lives of Jews and other groups? How risky are these actions? Or if he's chosen, or if the teams have chosen the wrong soldier, what happens then? And then could be fully digital, could be hybrid. If you use something like Microsoft Teams, for example, you could have students or participants playing it remotely, but using breakout rooms to work in small groups online, and then come back in as a whole group and work with an overall facilitator. So a hybrid version could work well in the classroom as well. Foreign language potential, and also potential to use the same framework to examine other historical settings. For instance, Vietnam 68, Rwanda 94, to name but 2. I finally just want to briefly mention, or give credit to Pitch House 77, aka my brother, who I think did great work on the artwork. The German History Society in Glasgow Caledonian University, my establishment, did great work in providing financial support for this. The GHS with one of its exhibition and outreach grants, and GCU also provided lots of organisational support, including helping me to get undergraduate student volunteers to help. And then the 3 colleges that have so far participated are Cumbernauld Academy, Clydeview Academy, and the aforementioned New College Lanarkshire. There's a photo of me with New College Lanarkshire tutors and students together with some of my own undergraduates a couple of months ago when we took this to their campus. And GCU, as I said, provided student assistance from the undergraduate module that I teach. Okay, so we've got 10 minutes, I think, for some quick Q&A.
5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay, right. Well, look, I mean, basically, I'd be interested in quick comments, reactions, any initial thoughts on whether this might be digitised. I'd be more than happy to chat about it individually with people. Do we have a coffee break next, or are we going straight into another session?
Another session.
Yeah, another session, but I think they're setting up lunch now, so it's like a...
Oh, I see, yeah. Well, I'm due at another session, so I think I'll need to wrap up now. But, I mean, certainly I'd be more than happy to chat to people. What I can actually do is leave a few of my cards on the desk there. In fact, what I can actually do instead, this is probably easier, if I come straight out of this and go into Word, and I will just put my email up there.
I don't know if you had a question.
Yeah, if anyone does have a question, feel free to ask.
I just wanted to know, because I didn't see if the different sort of character cards have different informations on the soldiers.
Yes. So you need to distinguish between the character team cards, of which there are 5, and then the soldier dossier. So the character team cards are A5, I think they are, and the soldier dossiers are A4. Okay, and you've got 7 soldier dossiers, one of which has already been filled out. That's Corporal Hartman, and then you've got the 5 character cards there. The character cards are just to invest teams in their character, to invest them more in the game. You don't necessarily need to have character cards, but I think it adds a further dimension. But the soldier dossiers are where you get the key info from to select the soldiers for Mercy Squad.
I'm going to interrupt you,
yes.
rather than you answering back. So can you kind of give comments and I'll try and write them down?
Oh, yeah.
Sure thing, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't quite get that.
No, it's just that, would you like to repeat your comment rather than...
My comment was just if the character cards and the, what did you call them, dossier? The information on the soldiers, if they are connected or not. So does Olga have different information on that sheet than Klaus or someone else? That was a question.
That's a good point. I'd say for the purpose of this version, no. But if it were digitised, it might be interesting to introduce that. Hi. Absolutely, but I'm just responding to initial comments, but I'm just answering them in turn. Who was next? Yeah.
No, I think basically just interrupt now, because I was thinking of what to ask. I think if there's some sort of interactivity between the profiles and specific dossiers.
Yeah.
For example, one is more inclined to have bias against women, and if you character women, then this of course shapes your view.
Again, that's the kind of nuance which this version doesn't allow time for, but which could be introduced into a digital version. So that's a good point as well. Thanks. Any other questions, comments? Well, I think we might wrap it up there. But
I'm just going to be ruthless and say, do people think that this is something that could go digital?
Yeah.
Well, that's nice to hear. Thanks.
And the adaptations is a very good point. So be very grateful if over time, if you could sort of...
I'm sorry. I will wrap up in a moment, but I need to... I'm trying to get into a Word document which I can actually write in. I don't know what's going on. Is there someone else coming in now? Okay, fine. Okay. So I've just been informed that there will be a session taking place in here right after this. So I think it's probably best if we just maybe take one more question, just one more while I write my email address in a Word document. Does anyone have a final question or comment? Well, I'm pleased to hear that the overall view is that, well, certainly the view that's been expressed is that this does have digital potential. I'd like to stress that I think the in-person version has lots of potential as well. I think there's real potential for interaction. I think there's room for both, but it's good to hear that the digital potential is there. Hi.
Maybe just add that I think it's important to consider what a digital space really adds and enhances, because I often feel like simply transposing something from the analog space digital can feel flat. And I think really considering in terms of immersions and systems what can be done digitally would be, I think, maybe even a different game, so both can still coexist, the analog one and the digital one.
Well, yes, and I suppose you could have Mercy Squad Basic and Mercy Squad Advanced, if you like. And as I said, I mean, they were just some bullet point thoughts about the sorts of extra features a digital version could incorporate. I definitely agree that there'd be limited value in just transposing this to digital, with the one exception of museum exhibits, I think, because, you know, it's the kind of relatively quick-fire 10-minute activity if museum visitors may be focused on one soldier, might be quite valuable. Anyway, I'll just type in my email, and if people want to take a snap of that, you can feel free to do so and drop me a line. And I'm also going to leave a few cards of mine, not at the front because people are coming in, but I'll leave it on the glass table by the door there. Thank you for your time and your enthusiasm.